Morocco is one of the world's largest exporter of phosphorus and does maybe 2 to 3 million metric tons of phosphorus exports every single year. And there's a town in Morocco that is sort of the epicenter of this phosphate mining called Khouribga. And if you Google Earth zoom down on that town and you look at Khouribga and you start zooming around the town, there's actually a high school called Phosphate High School. That's how significant phosphorus exports are for this particular area. I just found that to be kind of amusing and an indication as to how vital this particular mineral is for global ag and global fertilizer production. In the ongoing conversation around NPK, the three big macros, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, phosphorus sits squarely in the middle of that macronutrient triad. And one of the things that forever we have associated phosphorus with in cultivation is flower size. When you really want to drive heavier yields and bigger flowers, a lot of the conversation has revolved around phosphorus. I remember when we were first getting our cultivation started, one of the legacy growers that we had connected with had come by the facility and had made a comment about like, hey bro, it's like week one, you got to hit those plants with some heavy phosphates. You got to hit them now. And I remember hearing that and sort of went down the rabbit hole of phosphorus and trying to understand it. Phosphorus, phosphates, what are we even talking about here? So today I want to try to unpack that a little bit further, and over the last 10 years, our focus has certainly migrated a bit away from phosphorus as the God molecule for flower size, and more looking at it through that synergistic, holistic approach. So here we go. And so when we're looking at phosphorus and the role that it plays for plant growth and plant development, what are we talking about? We can really look at this through the lens of four key roles. The first is through that lens of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Phosphorus is there for that magical photosynthetic energy capture. So capturing that energy, storing that energy, and then mobilizing that energy. Phosphorus is the God molecule for that moment. The second key role that phosphorus plays in plant growth is in root development. And of course, without a super strong, healthy root zone, your plants are obviously not going to be optimized. So phosphorus plays a key role in root development. The third and sort of obvious role that phosphorus plays is in that flower, fruit, and seed development. Phosphorus is sort of renowned for being that God molecule for flower yields and flower size, and of course it plays a key role there. And the fourth and final role for phosphorus is just in a general disease prevention, immune system support for that plant. So those are the four key roles that phosphorus is playing for your plants. So phosphorus is one of those elements. Phosphorus is an element on the periodic table. So if we look at the periodic table, you're going to find phosphorus there as one of those key elements that in plant terms, in terms of plant uptake and plant nutrition, we really want to talk about phosphates, which is just a different form of it. It's this tetrahedral molecule that's surrounded by 4 oxygens. It's not something that we really care too much about in terms of the molecular side of things. What we're really focused on is what role is this playing for the plants and what they're actually needing from it. So we talk about the phosphorus cycle in nature, where you have rain and weather events that hit rock that then erode those phosphate ions that are released down the mountain into the lower pasture lands. The plants from the lower pasture lands absorb this phosphate. Animals eat those phosphate laden plants. They then excrete the waste back into the land. It then transpires back up into the atmosphere, and the cycle begins anew. What I want to get really clearly articulated here about phosphorus is this phosphorus cycling within the soil. And I want to explain it through the lens of basically 3 buckets. So the first bucket of phosphorus in the soil is unavailable to plants, and it is by far the biggest vault of phosphorus in nature. And this is going to be all of your rock and mineral form of phosphorus that is not bioavailable to plants, and it is the storehouse of this mineral. That is your biggest bucket of phosphorus in nature. The second bucket is the active phosphorus. This is phosphorus that has been mineralized into a form of phosphorus now that is much more readily available for the microbes in the soil to slide into the third and smallest bucket, which is the soil solution of phosphorus. So if you go from the vault of 80% of that phosphorus in rock form, it then slowly gets prepped and ready in that active bucket, the second bucket. From that second bucket, the microbes take it that next layer to the soil solution bucket, which is by far the smallest bucket. So along that continuum of the vault, the secondary active bucket, and then the soil solution, this is a self-regulating system of inorganic and organic phosphorus. So all of the communication that's happening down in that rhizosphere between the microbes and the plants that we've talked about in numerous videos is essential for this phosphorus cycle to happen. And the other thing that has been sort of interesting for us as a team is, as I've been sort of under the microscope here and looking at phosphorus specifically for this video, we went back and we revisited our soil reports, which I've used in previous videos. This is how I love to look at our saturated paste test, which is the bioavailable form of all the nutrients that are readily available. And on the saturated paste test here, we have phosphorus in the anion form, and you've got the parts per million that we track. And so as we've been tracking these, my assumption along the way was that our parts per million in the saturated paste was sitting in perfect range, which typically you want to see about 2 to 3 parts per million on that saturated paste test. As an example, Bioflower from Bio365, which is the other soil that we sort of use as that canary in the coal mine comparison between our soil and their soil, they were sitting at 3.54 anions, parts per million in the saturated paste test for their phosphorus. So Bio365 at 3.54, and we have been bouncing along over the last year, 2.54, 2.1, 1.9, 3.3. We've just been, right in that range. And so in terms of having bioavailable phosphorus for our plants, it's really been a non-issue. In our last soil report, we came up with a number. We were at 1.13 on our last test. And it caught us off guard, and it was a moment for us to look at, well, okay, so if we look at if we go back to that model of the 3 buckets, we're really only concerned with 2 buckets, the active phosphorus and the soil solution phosphorus. So active phosphorus being that stage right before the bioavailable soil solution. Soil solution is that saturated paste test. So that's where those parts per million really become the narrative there. We've actually made a few adjustments here in how we are bringing some inputs to the party here for our plants immediately to try to get some more bioavailable phosphorus in that soil solution account. And one of the products that we turn to, which is a product that we have not used before, but one that we're really excited about, it is a down-to-earth product. Down-to-earth is a company that's local here in the Eugene area. We love down-to-earth products. But this is a fish bone meal, and it is 4:20:0 in that NPK reading. So 4 parts nitrogen, 20 parts phosphorus, and 0 potassium. So this is a micronized, sort of almost like a powder form of fish bone meal that solubilizes in the reservoir, in the water, and is immediately bioavailable to the plants. So one of the things that I think will really help to sort of reframe the image of phosphorus, or in this case phosphates, is to really look at it through the lens of DNA, RNA, and ATP. If we look at it through this filter of DNA, RNA, and ATP, I think it'll help to understand that phosphorus is at the core of these energy systems. It's like in that nuclear reactor of cellular energy. It is in every single cell of every living thing, plants and animals. Adenosine triphosphate is ATP. So at the core of that nuclear reactor for energy is phosphorus. It's why we think about phosphorus as such an important macronutrient. It's why it is in that lineup of macronutrients, because it is so fundamental to living cells. And so if you look at it as that core building block, it really helps to understand how in plant development that phosphorus or those phosphates actually function. So if you think of phosphorus as sort of that core element in energy systems in plant developments, what you then start to understand is it's kind of silly and facile to simply say that it's about flower development or yield size. It's about so much more than that. And so I think that yes, it does contribute to building flowers and fruits. It's a mobile nutrient, and so the plant can use it however it wants. When we think about mobile versus immobile nutrients, it's really useful to understand that phosphorus is a mobile nutrient that the plant can shuttle from older leaves to newer growth, and it can help to develop all those new leading growths, including flowers. So I think that when we look at all of the key elements of what phosphorus does for plants, to say that it's just about flower development is overly simplified. One of the things that we looked at, probably 4 or 5 years ago in our cultivation were a couple of products that came to market. One was Mammoth P and the other was MegapFOS. So Mammoth P and MegapFOS were two products that were developed to help to unlock phosphorus and make it more bioavailable. One of the challenges when it comes to unlocking phosphorus is that it is a particularly stingy nutrient in the rhizosphere, meaning it is not present in the same volume that you typically find other nutrients. And so what phosphorus is there, making that bioavailable, is one of those key aspects of any cultivation practice. So Mammoth P and MegapFOS came along and they said, hey, we've got a great solution with a bacteria, the Magisterium bacteria that they were able to bottle and stabilize and introduce into that rhizosphere, thereby helping to unlock that phosphorus. So all of the key aspects of plant development are improved by the presence of phosphorus. It's not a question of having too much or too little phosphorus when it comes to optimizing your grow. It's about making what phosphorus is there bioavailable to the plants. Of course, this comes back to our ongoing discussion that we've had on many of our videos, which is the biology is the key, which is what those two products that I just mentioned, MegapFOS and Mammoth P, are there to support. They are a very specific bacteria that helps to unlock that phosphorus, convert it to a usable form of phosphate, and that's where that magic between biology and fertility ultimately comes into play. So all of the key components that phosphorus plays for that plant development realistically is not just about one particular thing like flower size. Phosphorus is the energy molecule that is found in all living cells, and it is a critical component to healthy, happy plants. My guess is that if we tested 20 different bagged soils or bulk soils across the country, we would find more than enough phosphorus in those soils to support any healthy, happy plant. It's really a question of how are we going to unlock that phosphorus and make it bioavailable to the plants. I don't think that you should be overly concerned with phosphorus. I think phosphorus is one of those elements that you have to be aware of. You have to understand the role that it plays, and you have to make sure that the biology that's in that soil is making that phosphorus available to your plants. Beyond that, the message for the day is don't stress too much about having phosphorus in your soil. Be more focused on unlocking the phosphorus that is present, and your plants will thrive. That's it for today's tips and tricks. And until the next time, let's cultivate.